Sounds good. Sounds
Hi,
good.
Adam Mills here with Roy LePage, and welcome to our Facebook Live series called Divorce Isn't a Bad Word, Navigating Uncoupling. Over the last year and a half, our team has seen how much of a toll COVID has played on people's relationships. And as a result, we wanted to put together a library of resources where I'm speaking with a number of different industry experts to ideally help anyone going through that uncoupling process. So today's show, I'm super excited about it. It's called Kids of Divorce, How to Keep Them Out of the Therapist's Office. And I have Melissa Lafreniere here with me, who's a registered psychotherapist, family mediator, arbitrator, and someone who also practices collaborative divorce. So Melissa, I'm going to read out your bio here really quick, and then we'll just jump right into the meat of things here.
Sounds good.
So Melissa is a registered psychotherapist working with families for over 20 years. In the last 5 years, she's narrowed her practice to be both divorce-centric and child-centered. Melissa found herself frustrated working on cases where parents hadn't managed the co-parenting relationship from the start. She was dealing with the fallout in her office, kids bearing the burden of the separation. She decided she wanted to make a difference and strategically put her focus where the problems originate, at the beginning. So today, Melissa gives parents the support they need so they can manage the situation from the get-go, so from the very, very start. So Melissa, yes, thank you again for agreeing to. I know you're absolutely swamped with work right now, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Super happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So the first thing like that kind of caught my eye, like, and speaking with you in the past, going through your website, is that, so, you believe that an integral part, I guess it's integral to protect the co-parenting relationship. So maybe can you speak to like, even like, or give us a sense of what is the co-parenting relationship? Because I think in most people's mind, like, divorce is kind of like things get cut off and now there's two separate parents, but I think the co-word is the word that's throwing me off.
Yes. So I think a lot of people believe that, hey, I'm going to end this relationship that isn't really working for me and I never have to see that person again. And ideally that works. But if you have children, you do have to still cooperate and negotiate and raise this little person together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think finding ways to shift from having a spousal relationship into a co-parenting relationship effectively does wonders for your kids in the long run. They need to still see you as being functional parents working together for their best.
Is there like I don't know if a rule book might be kind of a weird way to put it, but is there like a guide to this or something that you, like a resource you share to kind of like set like some, I don't know, is ground rules the right way to word it? I mean,
I wish there was a book, and maybe I should tackle that.
There we go.
But
In your spare time.
I think a lot of people are doing this blindly, right? I mean, it's the same as when you first have a baby. Nobody gives you a rule book. And so when your relationship changes and you are now trying to parent like something so important to you and raise something that's so important to you with someone who maybe you don't really like very much, I think it's very easy to let your personal feelings kind of slip into that. So the short answer is no, there's no rule book, but there are some basic things that I try to impress upon people as being really important. And the first one, and probably the most important one, is you have to love your kid more than you dislike the person that you now have to raise it with.
Right. Okay.
And so if you can do that, and keep that in the forefront of your mind, then I think you're on the right path for sure.
So it's kind of, it's like prioritizing, really. It's like saying, well, okay, like if my child and their well-being through this process is absolutely always number one, no matter what, then at least you're kind of starting things in the right direction, I guess.
That's right. And it's very easy to let negative feelings or maybe bad experiences take over and kind of color how you see your co-parent.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes a lot of times that splashes onto the children and makes their life a lot harder than it actually needs to be.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I mean, on this topic, can you speak to, I guess, the impact, like the good and the bad? Like, I don't know. I mean, you can't obviously share private examples, but can you give us kind of like a sense of like how, like the two different paths trajectories you can kind of go down?
So I mean, I know a lot of people who are separated and I was separated myself. So, I mean, I have some personal experience about this, and I've seen people do it so well where the kids really feel safe and secure and they see their parents spending time together in a healthy way, and they're doing things with the kids, and that's fantastic. And I think if you can do that and it be authentic and genuine, definitely strive for that.
Right.
And I've also seen people where they're trying to fake it till they make it, and it's really not going over well because see and feel everything.
Right.
There's a lot more that goes into communication than just your words. And so, you know, you could be saying all the right things, but your body language is giving you away, and your kids are always going to be paying attention to that more so than whatever it is that you say.
That's one thing. I mean, like our kids are 10 and 8, and the amount that I find they pick up on that is not verbal. You know,
Yeah.
just like actions, or like the way your face is, or whatever it happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, are
Yeah.
kids ever intuitive and like just able to really read? Like, they read the room quite well. Like
They
they're very good at it.
They do. Well, if you think like the first 2 years of your life, you're pretty much nonverbal, right? So everything that you're learning and gathering, you're getting from your environment. And so, you know, that skill doesn't go away just because you now have a vocabulary.
Yeah.
So pre-separation, there's lots of stuff that kids pick up on, even when parents think they're doing their best to like fight behind closed doors, or maybe they're not even talking at all, and that tension is now spilling over onto the children. I mean, there's
Jeez.
lots to think about, and kids are little sponges. They know a whole lot more than you think that they do.
I'm blown away by that a lot with our guys, and yeah, I can only imagine, because I guess like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of these times, like, you know, like a separation, divorce is something that could start, maybe it's a year, or maybe it's more than that before they, you know, that the process actually really formally gets going.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of different things that a kid could kind of pick up on, you know, throughout that time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of parents worry about the impact of separating. And that is something I hear a lot, like, well, I ruined my child's life, or like, we're going to stay together just for the children. And I would argue that, you know, sometimes that works okay, but most of the time kids end up saying, oh, like, I really wish my parents had just gone their separate ways
Right.
a lot earlier. And they actually are okay with it versus the alternative, which is living in a really tension-filled environment.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, especially if they, like, you know, we're saying like they pick up on all that nonverbal stuff anyway. I mean, I don't think there's any fooling them. Like, I don't think you're gonna pull the wool over their eyes and then go, oh, I had no idea.
No, no. And a lot of times if you talk to kids, they'll say, oh yeah, they were fighting a lot. I was worried about it. And then when they finally told me, it was like, okay, I'm relieved because now it's kind of out in the open and we can actually talk about it.
Wow.
Um, and if there's one thing that I know for sure is like what's left unsaid is what typically causes people the most angst and anxiety. So even for kids, you know, like if we got to name it, and if things aren't going well, it's better to talk about that than it is to pretend it's not happening and have your children wonder why something just doesn't feel okay.
Hmm. That's interesting. Like you know, the piece that goes unsaid. That I like that. That's interesting.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So processes wise, like when does it make sense for someone to reach out to you and kind of connect with you? Like, is it kind of like once they formalize the fact they're going through a separation? Is it, should I reach out if they're starting to think, I'm in a relationship, I don't know if it's working? Like when's the right time?
So I offer separation planning and like case consultation as well. So those are for parents who are exactly how you described it, where they're feeling like, okay, I think we're headed in this direction. What are all the things we need to consider? How do we tell our kids? What should we expect? And then, you know, we sit down as a group, or maybe it is individually, and you're just sort of in the information gathering stage of your separation, and we talk about it. And, you know, I'm happy to give all kinds of resources and kind of walk you through possible scheduling based on your child's age and stage of development, and give you some ideas of what to expect. And then from there, if people decide that they want to use my help to kind of organize their plan for parenting their children, then we kind of do that as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So it can be very, very early onset, like in like the kind of preliminary, like I'm pretty much there mentally, but I'm not, you know, like formally there. Like that could be the
Yeah.
right time.
Yeah. A lot of people want reassurance too, right? That what they're doing is the right thing. And I
Yeah.
mean, there really is no right thing. There's
Yeah.
the better thing. But every family is different and unique, and they're going to do what's going to work for their family. But the one thing I tell parents all the time is that divorce, it is a trauma. It is something that impacts the family. It does hurt, but it doesn't have to be traumatic.
Right.
And the difference between it being like a traumatic thing that carries forward and colors every aspect of your kid's life really lies in how the parents execute their separation.
Wow. Okay. No, I mean, I think that's a real life, you know, kind of way of looking at it. Because you can't say, oh no, it's gonna be great. Well, I don't think it's gonna be great. You know, like there's gonna be trauma there, but
Yeah.
there's a better way to do it.
Yes, yeah, and I've looked into this and I've been doing this for a little bit, and the one thing that always surprises me, and I try to share with people, is that there's lots of research that says kids from separated houses where there's really low conflict, they do just as well as children who stayed in intact families.
Hmm.
It's where there's a lot of fighting and a lot of like lack of cooperation and just open acrimony that actually impacts their kids and gives them the stress and like the issues moving forward.
Right.
And so, which is why I really work to support parents on the proactive side of things, so that I'm not working with them later on the
because the reactive is now kids in your office.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that I think, like, if I were going through this process that I feel like would stress me to no end would be just having that conversation and just telling my kids and saying like, hey, you know what, we're no longer working, we want to, part ways, whatever. Do you coach parents on how to like actually like how to say it, like when to do it? Because that, like, me thinking of it right now, I'm like, oh my God, that's like, it's making my heart race a bit. I'm like, that's really stressful to try and figure that out.
It is. It's awful. It's awful. And I there's no getting around that. It's an awful conversation to have. So I do coach parents on how to frame it, finding a joint narrative, finding a way to present the information that shows that you're aligned, not finger pointing. We kind of practice it. We can role play it even, and then tell them what to expect.
Right.
Depending on the child's age. Some kids are like, oh, okay. And then they circle back 2 weeks later with a question.
Right.
We'll talk about that. And other ones have lots of questions from the beginning. And I coach parents on what I think is important for them to have as answers so that they can alleviate their child's anxiety.
Okay. Yeah. Just to me, like thinking about that, that's like a part of this whole thing. I'm like, ooh, that would be a very tough piece to deliver. Yeah.
It's not fun at all. I've had to do it personally. It's yucky. But I will say the anticipation of it is far worse than the actual conversation.
Gotcha. Okay.
The up to it is definitely worse. And then after, then it kind of, you can talk about it. You can share your feelings. You can discuss and problem solve.
Yeah. I guess the anticipation is, I mean, if you prepare properly, the anticipation, I mean, it would be way worse than the actual delivery. I think as long as you're actually preparing effectively so that you're communicating that in a proper way.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to suggest to parents that they find a joint narrative for the end of their marriage. Everybody has the story of how they met.
Right.
And the story that gets circulated at parties.
Yeah.
Right? But finding a joint narrative of how that part of your relationship ended, I think is equally important, because that is the story that, generations will hear.
Right.
So keep that in mind. Do we really want to paint the brush of like, this person was horrible, they did so many terrible things, because that will be the story, the narrative that's carried through multi-generations, right? When they talk about you guys as grandparents.
That's a really powerful way and a really good way of looking at it, for sure.
Yeah.
So another thing that we had in here was our question I had for is how you talk to children. So you call it child inclusive mediation.
Yes.
So can you kind of break that down a little bit more for me?
So there are times when people want to hear from their kids. And so, depending on the child's age, they do have a voice, but they definitely don't have a choice. And so sometimes parents will ask in the course of a mediation, hey, we kind of want to hear what our kids have to say. And so then I would speak with them and ask them some questions that, we've already formulated, and bring back that feedback and say, like, okay, this is actually how they're feeling. This is what their preferences might be. Now that we understand this, how can we build their voice into what it is that you guys are going to do in terms of a plan?
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes good sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, your kids live your separation, right?
Yeah.
You get to go off and have a new life, and the other parent have a new life, but your kids are the ones that has to live that decision.
Well, so they live in that kind of co-parenting, I guess, world that you create.
Yeah.
Because because they're not just going in one direction or the other. They're floating between the two always.
Yeah. And so if you love your kids more than you hate your former spouse, You're constantly that as easy as possible, because they are the ones that have to navigate that dynamic now,
Yeah,
because once they go off to their moms or their dads, you get to go do whatever it is that you want to do,
that's right.
with the freedom now that you have. So it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah, I think the thing, like, and you said it now a couple of times in this, and I think it's one of those things I think you probably need to drill into people's mind, is that you got to put the kids at the forefront. They're number one, and then put yourself behind that.
Yeah. And it's hard, especially when you're in a period of transition. It's
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah. Oh, Melissa's frozen on us here, unfortunately. Maybe she'll come back to us. Let's see. Oh, you're back. Can't hear you there, but I can see you again. Maybe what I'll do is if you want, I can kick you out, and then you can rejoin. Let's give that a shot. Yeah, we'll see if this works here. There.
I'm so sorry. That was my worst nightmare come to fruition. I'm
No,
so
it's all good.
sorry.
It's the beauty of technology. But
Oh
no,
my
I
God.
I had to just kick you out and then bring you back in, and then here we are
Oh,
again.
okay. I apologize to everybody
No
watching.
sweat.
Very embarrassing. Okay.
That's all good. That's just the beauty of Facebook Live. I mean, who knows what's gonna happen?
I guess so. Inopportune phone calls come in.
That's
And
it.
anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Okay. But
Um,
yes, the question you were asking me before it all got messed up was, yeah, you definitely have to keep yourself second in this type of situation.
yeah, no, that makes 100% sense. Like, kids
Mm.
number one always, and then follow yourself second. And like you were saying, it's probably when you're going through that separation or divorce phase, and you're trying to refocus and refigure yourself out. I
Yeah.
mean, it's probably really hard or easy to get wrapped up in that piece for yourself, and lose sight of, okay, no, kids number one, then me number two.
100%. And a lot of times these are relationships that have been going on for a while, and maybe people got married really young, and now they've got this freedom that they didn't have in their mid 20s, or people are trying to reestablish themselves as an individual, and not as a parent sometimes. So I see all kinds of things that get in the way.
Yeah,
But what I hear the most often, from kids, is that they just wish their parents would get along, and
yeah,
that would be the number one thing that would help them move forward.
yeah. No, I could see that.
Yeah.
Another note I had here was, I guess there's some common co-parenting struggles. So
Mhm.
there's two that I had written down my notes. So one was the separation contact issue, and the other one was the parenting coordination.
Okay.
I know we have a couple minutes left, but if you can speak to those, that'd be great.
Sure. So separation contact issues happen when, there's a separation, and then the children feel like they struggle to go to one home or the over the other. So, maybe they're living mostly with mom and they don't want to go with dad. And then the mom's like, well, what do I do? I don't want to force them,
Right.
because that could be a problem. So part of the work that I do is helping parents figure that part out, and maintain connections with their entire family. Obviously, there's hoping that there's no protection concerns or anything that would preclude a healthy relationship. But for the most part, like, how do we maintain that contact? And then how do we work together to ensure that the children grow up with, like, both parts of themselves in their life? Because,
Right.
half a mom, half a dad. So
Yeah.
how do we keep that going?
Yeah.
Um, and for a lot of times parents are hurt, right? And it's easy to not want to help the other parent have a relationship with a child, especially if they feel like they've been injured themselves, right?
Right.
So working with that. And then parenting coordination is a post separation support where people who really cannot get along and they need that extra person involved to kind of work on the co-parenting relationship, and then making decisions where parents cannot. So sometimes parents will ask me to be a baby judge on parenting issues where, you know, if they cannot make the decision and a decision needs to be made, then somebody like me would have the authority to make that decision. So that exists as well for
Gotcha.
people who cannot co-parent together alone.
It sounds like, I mean, whenever you have clients that you're working with, I mean, you become like just such an integral kind of puzzle piece in that relationship, or that the process that you're kind of, I mean, you're right in the thick of it. It's not like you're advising from one side. I mean, you're right in the middle of what's going on.
Yeah, I like to be a resource. I mean, I think it's important to have someone to kind of touch base with on these issues, especially because it's so important for your kids moving forward. And, you know, there's so much that can be done to avoid the things that, you know, have children end up with high anxiety or depression or, you know, behavioral issues that could be addressed, you know, before they even happen.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's amazing work that you're doing.
Oh, thanks. I really like it.
So for people to find you or to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to search you out and find you?
So they can visit website, which is truenorthmediation.ca, and then they can follow the links to getting a hold of me, like emails there, phone numbers there, and my booking information's there as well.
That's amazing. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate you taking the time to do it. And I know
But,
it's always fun doing these kind of like, you know, tech type things. So
yeah.
so thanks for dealing with that fear as well for me.
Well, it was my pleasure. It's been really fun. And again, I'm sorry for the little blip there.
No worries at all. That's amazing.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. It was nice to see you.
Okay. Likewise. Bye.
Bye.